Okay, good morning. So in yesterday's class we were doing JS Mill. That is what John Stuart Mill. And what are the important works written by JS Mill? Yeah, one is on liberty. Second one is what? Subjection of women. Is also written women suffrage. Means giving voting rights for women. So we also did to understand JS Mill, we also had to understand the utilitarian philosophy promoted by who? Jeremy Bentham. So what was the relation between Bentham and J.S. Mill? Bentham was his teacher. Okay. So obviously, what in simple terms, what did you understand by utilitarianism? Maximum good for maximum number. And he also described certain features of utilitarianism. One, we also call it as what? Common man's philosophy. Why do we call it as common man's philosophy? Because it is easy to understand for a common man. So what was the philosophy? Do maximum good for maximum number of people. And why did he say that maximum good for maximum number of people? So according to Bentham, his understanding what every individual, like how Hobbes told, he is controlled or ruled by what? Two sovereign masters. Who are the two sovereign masters? Pleasure and pain. And ultimate for every individual to be what? Maximize pleasure and minimize pain. So what he told, ultimately any policy or any decision that is taken, it should be guided by this principle that you do bring greatest happiness for the greatest number or maximum happiness for the maximum number of people. So that is what he said was utilitarian philosophy, and he told pleasure and happiness are one and the same. So he described it by saying that what? Pushpin is same. Pushpin is same as poetry. So Pushpin is a game which is played in Russia. So he told what pleasure you get by playing this game and what pleasure you get by reading poetry. They are one and the same. There is no difference. So he told there is no qualitative difference in what happiness or pleasure. Everything is one and the same. All is that there is only quantity matters. Means you have to just look at how much happiness you are creating, how much pleasure you are creating. And he told this can be also measured. And he also proposed a measuring indicator called as what? Prolific calculus. Prolific calculus. And so this was the idea promoted by what? Jeremy Bentham. But as we say, no, why we read this? Because we need to understand what Mill brought the modification in these ideas and why Mill had to bring modification in these ideas, because this idea came under intense criticism. So one of the person who criticized was Carlyle, who called it as what? Fixed philosophy. Why he called it as fixed philosophy? But he's equating that when pigs, they will just go for satisfaction of appetite. So pig will also eat from gutter if required. It does not make a difference in quality. All it wants to what? fulfill its appetite. So he told this is a pig's philosophy. Okay, then you had John Rawls. John Rawls, who criticized the idea because here you are speaking justice in terms of only the maximum or the majority. You are ignoring the rights and what you can say, the justice of the minority. Means you are justifying the suffering of few for pleasure of many. So in simple example, you take in the Roman Empire, if you have seen the Gladiator movie, so there a prisoner will be put in front of a stadium to fight a lion, and majority will take pleasure out of it. So now you can justify that saying it is utilitarianism. It is providing pleasure to maximum number of people. So he told from an ethical point of view it can't be defended. What Rawls? So Rawls told justice cannot be seen only through the lens of majority. Less justice should be also seen through the lens of minority. So that you'll understand when you read Rawls. Rawls says that justice is like a chain link, means it's like a chain which has links. Even if one link in the chain is weak, the entire chain will lose significance. So that is how society is. So if there are certain people who are suffering, the entire society cannot be happy. Understand? That you will understand later when he brings affirmative action. Okay, in Rawls, he will tell there is a need of affirmative action. But this fellow had spoken about what? What is justice? Doing maximum good for maximum number of people. So we also gave examples yesterday that how this idea of justice can't be applied everywhere. So the idea of there are certain scenarios where you can use it. Okay. So let us think for a scenario now. There is COVID. Now let us think 100 people in this class are suffering from COVID. Intense case. They might die. And now maybe I have vaccination only for 90 people. For 10 people I don't have. Now obviously the idea of justice I am going to use here is that I am going to save 90. 10 I can't help. That's the thing. But the same scenario when we reverse and say that let us take there are 100 people in this class and 90 people belong to upper caste, 10 people belong to Dalits. Now 90 people will come and tell me that we are not going to attend your class. Why? Because you have 10 people who are from the Dalit community, so we won't sit with them, we can't sit with them. So if you want your classes to run, you listen to us. Now here I can't go by the idea of justice saying that I am going to reach out to the majority and ignore the 10 minority. So idea of justice can't be everywhere utilitarian point of view. That was what the point was. Okay. But this is what he promoted, the idea. That is what utilitarian philosophy is. So basically his idea is that is why this fellow criticized what it is Pick's philosophy. Okay. Now what J.S. Mill did, he brought modification because since it was criticized in that regard, he told we need to change the idea of utilitarianism. It can't be blindly like what this his master is telling. So one of the modification what this Mill brought, he disagreed with certain points on what Bentham had proposed. So one point of difference was that when Bentham said there is no difference in quality of happiness, this fellow disagreed. He told happiness and pleasure are not the same. So I told it's a misunderstanding. Happiness and pleasure are not the same. So he said when we look at happiness or when even we look at pleasure, he told you can't just go by quantification. He told it is useless. You can't quantify happiness. So that is why he told this fellific calculus, what this fellow had proposed, it is useless. Why it is useless? Because he told you can't quantify happiness and all. But he told there is qualitative difference in happiness. Okay, what do you mean by qualitative difference? So J.S. Mill is a person who is also influenced by readings of Socrates and Plato and Aristotle. You find their influence in his ideas. So how? So he told when you compare a person like Socrates and when you compare a normal man, their idea of happiness or pleasure will be different. Why it will be different? Because both are not same. So let us think, now you might read a poetry and you might derive happiness from it. You are deriving happiness from it. Or let us think there is a psychopath. like if you take the Dandupalya gang in Bangalore, when they used to slit people's throat, the hissing sound that used to come in their breath, that used to give them a lot of pleasure. That is also a kind of pleasure. Ultimately, what are you deriving pleasure? So it was this kind of pleasure and the pleasure what you are deriving from reading a poetry are not same. There is a qualitative difference in both. So he told there is nothing that quantification of pleasure. He told every pleasure or every kind of happiness what you drop are not the same. There should be a qualitative difference. So that he disagreed with Bentham, saying that when you say that all pleasure is same, all happiness is same, he told all pleasure or happiness can't be the same. And for you to understand what is really happiness, you need to have knowledge like what Socrates did. Because Socrates had spoken about, na, when you have true knowledge, you will be able to understand, purpose of life. You will be understand what is the true meaning of happiness or true meaning of what is a good life. When you don't have true knowledge, you might not understand what exactly. See, for example, that's why we said this is highly debatable field, social science. It's not like science. Why? Now, this fellow might tell tomorrow what is his happiness, clearing UPSC exam. That is my goal. It gives me a lot of happiness. Now, this might fellow will tell, no, for me happiness is what? Having a stable family life. It can be anything. Now, he can derive from power what he is getting, he might feel happy. This fellow might be happy that even I don't have power, it's fine, I have a stable family life. So obviously, there will be always a qualitative difference. For example, you take a Buddha, he said that what? Happiness does not come from material possession. Happiness comes from giving up material possession. Understood? So Mill is speaking from that point of view, and that is where he disregards what Bentham told. So Bentham would have told Pushpin is same as poetry, but Mill will tell Pushpin is not same as poetry. There is a qualitative difference in the happiness or the pleasure what you draw. And what Mill also says that he makes a statement where he says, I prefer to be man dissatisfied. I prefer to be man dissatisfied than pig satisfied. Pig satisfied. Prefer to be Socrates dissatisfied. Socrates dissatisfied than man satisfied. Then man satisfied. Getting your point? Now we have to understand in what context he has told this statement and what is the meaning of this statement. So what he is trying to explain here is that the word man dissatisfied and the word pig satisfied means he is trying to convey the point that there is a qualitative difference in happiness and pleasure. Now what is one level of qualitative difference? Man and animal are not same. Get your point? Man is not just another animal. Animal will, like pig, it's an animal. It does not have reason. It does not have logic. Pig will be satisfied even by eating from gutter, because all it has to do is fill its stomach. But he told, I prefer to be man dissatisfied. Man is not like an animal. God has given him reason. He knows what is good or what is bad. The second level of statement, what he makes is that among men, also all men are not equal. There is a person like Socrates, there is a person like common man. Common man will be satisfied with what? Material benefits in this world. A person like Socrates was not satisfied with the material world. He was always wanted to search for a greater truth. So the point what he is trying to make out is that the idea of happiness is relative. the idea of happiness, there is a qualitative difference. That is what he is trying to send. So he told it's not that all happiness are same, and that is why he says, I prefer to be man dissatisfied rather than being pig satisfied. I prefer to be Socrates dissatisfied rather than being man satisfied. So he's drawing a level of difference between humans and animals. Right? We can't tell humans are just animals. Humans might have, animal tendency in them. And that is why we describe now when some crime happens, we say it is inhuman in character. Why it is inhuman in character? Because animals don't have reason. For example, you can't go make peace deal with a tiger. Come, we'll negotiate. It's animal instinct. It will be aggressive towards you. But humans have a choice. Humans have reason. So for example, now India's attack on Pakistan, it's not a blind animal attack, it's a calculated attack what they've done. Means saying that it is a non-escalatory attack on assets in Pakistan which are housing terror camps. Means India has made it clear to the world that what? We have not blindly attacked the civilians of Pakistan, we have targeted certain terror centers in Pakistan. So this is not an attack on Pakistan's military assets, or it is not an attack on Pakistan's civilians. You know, even though India and Pakistan have nuclear weapon, it does not mean tomorrow only Pakistan will launch a nuclear weapon, India will also not, because we have reason, we can, again it's the ultimate thing that it can lead to. If you go by the ladder of escalation, things can escalate, it has escalated. What do you mean by escalation? It started with Pakistan using non-state actors against Indian civilians on Indian soil. They escalated it. So there was a counter reaction from India where they attacked the assets in Pakistan which was housing terrorists. Now again Pakistan escalated it yesterday night when they attacked certain Indian cities in that regard. Now again the escalation go. Now India has attacked in Lahore, Karachi, etc. Now again the ball is in Pakistan's court. Next escalation point, ground forces will be involved. Next level of escalation can be, direct conflict between the air force between two sides. Maybe the final escalation will be something like a nuclear. But the world will also not sit silent till we reach a stage where there is a nuclear conflict between India because that is what we say nuclear deterrence means. Common sense use of nuclear weapons on either side will result in what? Large scale destruction. Right? It's not like a computer game. Okay, we'll launch here, we'll attack. If there is a nuclear conflict, it's not about who is the winner or who is the loser. It is going to be large scale destruction on either side. And that is what we say, men do have reason. They do have logic. So that is what Mill was trying to say, that humans are different from animals. Because humans have power of reason. And in that also what he told, all humans are not equal. Why? Because some humans have greater degree of reason compared to others. That is why he uses Socrates. Socrates is considered what? One of the most intelligent person on the earth. Or the most knowledgeable person on the earth. And that is why he told, I prefer to be Socrates dissatisfied. Because a normal man, a common can be dissatisfied with what? The material possessions. But for a person like Socrates, he understood that what? The material world is not the reality. Understood? And that is why we say happiness is always relative. It's relative. See, let us think now this fellow, he might feel he is happy if he clears prelims. Now she might have written 2-3 mains, not cleared interview. She might feel happy, I'll be very happy if I go to interview. Now she might have given 2-3 interviews, but not in the final list. So she might always think that his life is better, he is already into Indian Revenue Service. Now this fellow will always feel that that fellow's life is better because he's got into Indian police service. Now that fellow might feel that fellow's life is even more better. Why? Because he's got into Indian administrative service. That fellow might feel that fellow's life is very better because he's got into Indian administrative service home cadre. And the person with Indian administrative home cadre might feel that this fellow's life is better, he is not selected anything, he has a very good family life. He does not have a family life, he can't spend. So it's a circle, it's only based on what you think gives you happiness. And that's why he's trying to say all happiness are not same. Understood? So the point what Mill made, there is qualitative difference in happiness, and he told you can't quantify happiness, and you can't base your decision on quantification. That is why he modified utilitarianism, saying that you can't accept it as what, just quantifying. There is a quality. That is where he said pushpin is not same as poetry. Demand. So what he said? Pushpin is not same as poetry. So basically both these statements are relating to same question. If they ask this statement in exam or if they ask that statement in exam, your answer is not going to be any different. The question is indirectly about what? J.S. Mill's modification of utilitarian philosophy. So basically when you write your answer, first you have to write Jeremy Bentham, you have to write about utilitarian philosophy, then you have to bring the modification, and one of the main point of modification is that there is a qualitative difference in happiness. Okay, and he rejected the quantification of happiness. He rejected philosophic calculus. Understood? So this was one of the major thing that what J.S. Mill brought with regard to utilitarian philosophy. So why he brought this modification? Because that philosophy had come under intense criticism, and he felt it was his right duty to reform it, to modify it. And that is why some say that this J.S. Mill, he modified utilitarianism to such an extent that no longer utilitarianism appeared to be utilitarianism in the original form. And that is why he says, I am the Peter who defied my master. Means he is the person who changed the ideas of his master. That you can also see in the relation between Plato and Aristotle also. Same thing also apply. You can also see Aristotle was the Peter who defied his master, means he brought certain modifications. Okay, and that is why what he writes, I am the Peter, I am the Peter who defied his master. One more thing what you can observe with this J.S. Mill's modification of utilitarianism, for Bentham what he had done, he had given superior position to utility over liberty. Mean, if it is satisfying the majority of people, you can take away the liberty of minority. But for Mill, liberty was a non-negotiable principle. So he brought back central focus to liberty over what? Utility. So Bentham was the other way around. He gave more superior position to what? Utility over liberty. But Mill brought back the central focus on what? Liberty. That is why some say that when Jeremy Bentham, because after Locke comes Bentham, Jeremy Bentham took the liberalism towards what? Utilitarianism. But J.S. Mill brought back liberalism with central focus on what? Liberty. So Mill gave supremacy for liberty over utility. And that is why we connect this to his next idea, that what? J.S. Mill is one of the greatest defenders of what? Liberty. And that is why they say, if there is anybody who is liberal, that is J.S. Mill. That is why I say, if there is anybody who is liberal, it is J.S. Mill. And that is where you have written his work on liberty. So on liberty he has spoken about the idea of liberty, what is liberty, why liberty is important, etc., etc. And that is what we will have to connect to the next point, that what did Mill say about liberty, what is his views on liberty. So his views on liberty is written in his work called as On Liberty. So what we can say is that J.S. Mill is one of the strongest advocate or defender of liberty. Now what Mill says that, Mill, he believes that man has what? Reason. Because Mill has been also read writings of Plato, Socrates, he's also influenced Greek political ideas. That is why we say the entire Western political thought is nothing but footnotes of Plato and Aristotle. So basically man has reason. When you have reason, the first thing what man will desire or want is liberty, that he wants freedom. And he told this is very essential for an individual free. So what he says, there should be three kinds of liberty, he says. Liberty of thought, and expression, liberty of thought and expression, liberty of association, and liberty of action. Means what? Every individual should be given the freedom to express his thoughts, his ideas. Every individual should be given the freedom to form an association, means come in a group, and every individual should be also allowed to act. And he says that all are logically connected. Why? Now let us think, for example, now this fellow, he has an idea that he wants to make a movie. Expression can be anything, right? Expression is not just writing. I think when you have read polity, you have told the Supreme Court has declared under Article 19, 1 clause A, the freedom of creative expression. What do you mean by creative expression? Movie making, music making, drawing cartoons, etc. That is also a creative expression. Now, for that movie to come into, let us take production and come into being, he can't do the movie alone. Simple, you can't make a movie alone. You can't be like Ravichandran, Ekangi flopped. At the end of the day, he didn't make Ekangi alone. There will be production set, etc., etc. But the point is that always your ideas can be better expressed if you are able to form an association with like-minded people, because your idea will become now generate more power. Okay. So for example, let us take now, you have the freedom of expression, you are protesting against the Farm Bill ordinance. If you alone protest, government is not going to care. Simple, you go, I'll do hunger strike. They'll do hunger strike, it's okay. Nobody will know if you died of hunger strike also. Obviously, if there is increasing number of people who join hands with you, of course then it will. So he says every kind of freedom, you have freedom to freely express yourself, but at the same time you should also allowed to be form association, and only when you come together as a group. Now idea what you also have liberty of action, to act on your ideas. That is why he says that these are three important freedoms or liberties that an individual should have. What is that? Freedom of thought and expression, freedom to form association, and freedom to act. Understood? This he told is very essential for every individual. For any individual, because see, any individual who has reason, he always has certain set of goals he wants to achieve, and to achieve those goals he has to be freely able to express himself, he has to be able to form association with like-minded people, he should be also able to act on his goal. And that is why he says this is central to an individual, and that is why we say he is one of the greatest liberal. Not only for that, now what Mill also says, the question remains is that why is this freedom important? What is the benefit of it? He says there is lot of benefit in freedom of speech and expression, or the three kinds of freedoms what I told. One, he says there is benefit for the individual. What is the benefit for the individual? So basically every individual, only when given freedom or only given liberty, he is in a position to attain what we call as self actualization. Self actualization means reach his best form. So for to reach his best form, to be best of himself, the main thing what he needs? Freedom, liberty, absence of restrictions. And he says there is not only individual benefit, each individual benefit will also contribute to the larger social good. There is also benefit for the society at large. So how benefit for society at large? So for J.S. Mill, because since he is also influenced by Socrates, he also believes in the idea of dialectics, and for him truth can only emerge through debate or discussion, and for you to debate and discussion you need to have freedom to express yourself. So he says that by restricting somebody from speaking, one, you are harming him. Second one, you are also harming the society at large because you are hindering the truth from coming out. And that is why he says that even a madman should be allowed to speak. Why? You might think today that what he is telling is mad, but who knows, like 20 years later what he was telling might be the truth. Simple, na? Like Galileo told the sun is the center of the universe, earth revolves around the sun. That time church almost went to kill him. So had Galileo not expressed his opinion, today reality would have been not found out, because today we know the reality is that what? It is not the earth which is the center of the universe, it is the sun which is the center of the universe, and earth revolves around it. So what he says that you won't achieve anything by suppressing somebody's voice, you are harming that person and you are harming the society at large. Why? Because you are delaying the truth from arising. So he always believes that what? By providing people freedom of speech and expression, you are contributing to their self-development and you are also contributing to social evolution, or you are becoming closer to truth. For him, truth can only emerge through what? Rational debates and discussions, like what Socrates said. And that is why he says even a madman should be allowed to speak. Even a madman should be allowed to speak. Why? Because he says that in every argument there is half truth, half lie. It is only through arguments, means dialectics is what now. So how does dialectics work? So let us take, now this fellow made an argument, let us take any one argument. There might be some positives in his argument, there might be some negatives in his argument. Now she brought a counter argument to him. There might be some positives in her argument, there might be some negatives in the argument. When both of them argue, now a synthesis will happen. Means they might come to certain agreement. Okay. So the new argument what comes here, it is far superior than the previous two argument because it is more refined. So in every stage the element of positivity is increasing, the element of negativity is going. That is what we say law of dialectics. Law of dialectics has three laws. One is the unity of opposites, means for every argument there is a counter argument. For example, if there is day, there is night. If there is light, there is dark. That's the fundamental philosophy. For every argument, there is a counter argument. Second law of dialectics is that negation of negation means when arguments happen, when discussions happens. So for example, let us say we bring a bill. The opposition might tell these are the things which we are not accepting in the bill. Then discussion will happen and then you will come to an agreement. Okay, fine, this will remove from the bill. This is the new refined form of the bill. Now every new synthesis can be a thesis because there will be one more argument that will come. No, okay, there are further certain issues in this. So this keeps happening, negation of negation keeps happening till quantity becomes quality. What do you mean by quantity becomes quality? Here there was 60% positivity, 40% negativity. Let us say here there was 50% positivity, 40% negativity. Now next stage, the negativity declined. You have 70% positivity, 30% negativity. One more round of debate, then you have 80% positivity, 10% negativity. I am telling negativity in the nonsense negative argument, disagreement. When you arrive at a point where there is no more disagreement and both parties will agree that okay, this is what is the truth, we agree upon it, that is the truth according to dialectics. Means here there is no more quantity of improvement of the idea, the perfect idea has arrived. Understood? So dialectics will end once you arrive at what? A stage where there is no more contradiction. This is called as the law of dialectics. So for J.S. Mill, for any kind of dialogue or debate to happen, what is the most important component? You need to have freedom of speech and expression, and that is why he says even a madman should be allowed to speak, because there is no loss for the society at large. If you stop speaking from making somebody from speak, the society might be at loss. You might hinder the emergence of truth. Understood? So that is why he is giving the argument. What is the benefit of freedom of speech and expression both for an individual as well as the society at large? What is the other thing what Mill also says about this what liberty or freedom? He says that no state can become great by dwarfing its own individuals. What he says that no state can become great by dwarfing its own individuals, its own people. What do you mean by dwarfing? Short, good look madam. What do you mean by dwarfing? Making less. How they will make less? So basically curtailing their freedom. No state will become great because every state is a symbol of what kind of people compose that state. So it is the duty of the state always to enhance the individual capacities, and how individual capacities can be enlarged. It is only when the state will provide them the freedom of speech and expression, when the state will provide them freedom of association, when the state will provide the freedom of action. If any state which takes away all this liberty, it becomes authoritarian in character, that state can never grow. Why? Because end of the day, a state is a reflection of an individual. What Plato told, you can relate here. State is individual writ large. What do you mean by that? State is nothing but a magnified version of an individual. That's why I told this one is highly influenced by the Greek ideas. So what he says that no state can become great by dwarfing its own individuals. By suppressing its own individuals, the state cannot become a great. For any state to become great, it has to create necessary conditions for them to have their freedom of speech and expression, freedom to form association, freedom to act. Only then that nation or that state can achieve excellence. Understood? So that is why we call J.S. Mill as what? A strong advocate of liberty. Understood? Why we call them? So here three parts you understood. He told what kind of liberty. Then he explained why each liberty is important, how they are interconnected. And he also told why liberty is needed for the welfare of an individual as well as welfare of a society. He also linked the idea of dialectics, that only through dialectics truth can be arrived. So by suppressing somebody from speaking, you are delaying the arrival of truth. It's not only what Mill told, you can also apply. So why do we say that, even why the Supreme Court in India has told under Article 19, right to protest is one of your fundamental right. Or take, okay, for example, take British rule in India. One of the root causes of the 1857 revolt was British suppressing the Indian voices. There was nowhere they could express. That is why I think Pradeep sir would have done like a pressure cooker syndrome. You know, it blast at one go. Why? Because they didn't have any channels to express. When you don't allow people to express themselves, you don't allow people in a democratic setup to protest, freedom of protest, obviously that can take another route. What is another route? Use of violence. So that is what he told. Giving that freedom to an individual is beneficial not only for him, it is also beneficial for society at large. And that is why he told no state can progress if they don't allow their individuals to freely express their opinion, freely bring their thoughts, freely bring their ideas. And that is why he told no state can become great by dwarfing its own individuals. Understood? So he is also saying that what? Freedom of speech and expression, freedom to association, freedom to action will also contribute to the state's prosperity. Why? Because every state is a reflection of the individuals composing it. Like what Plato told, what? State is nothing but individual writ large. State is a magnified version of the individual. And that's why he told truth can come from anywhere. In every argument there might be some element of truth. There might not be the complete truth, but there might be some element of truth. But the moment you cut down, no, I am not going to listen, then who is at loss? You are at loss, society at loss. Simple now. That's what we say. We have to listen to different ideas. It doesn't mean we have to take all the ideas, but we have the reason to understand what is positive and what is negative in each idea. But when you are not ready to listen to ideas itself, that is not progression. That applies in everything from parliament to, let us take, day to day life. It can happen from even from day to day life, etc. So let us think, why do academies take feedback from students? It's not for your improvement, it is for our improvement. Again, mind. Now, if we don't take feedback from students, completely suppress the students, saying that you don't have right to express yourself, obviously, what is going to happen? See, 100 people might give 100 different feedbacks, but among them you can choose, okay, what is required or not. So that is what he told, even a mad person should be allowed to speak, because we can't say who is exactly mad, because the idea what he is given might appear to be mad today, but maybe a few decades down the line that particular idea might be reality. Or when Elon Musk, he said that he is going to launch a reusable rocket, people laughed at him. They told this is never going to happen. Few years back he proved it. It is possible. That is why he says that you don't gain anything by stopping somebody from speaking. You lose everything, but you have lot to gain from what? And he told, what is the other argument? Even that fellow is what telling is wrong. He will also understand what he is telling is wrong. It is only through a debate or a discussion. You are getting my mind? So what you believe as the truth or what you believe as the correct is only vindicated as correct if you allow that idea to be tested. What do you mean by allow that idea to be tested? Allow that idea to be discussed, debated, and that is why I think when you do your PhD, right, you will present your thesis. Now they will ask questions on the thesis. Why? Because they are testing your idea, is it practical or not. Why? Because now sometimes the thesis might not be approved because maybe some ideas what you win. So you will come back again with a better modification. And that is what he told is the significance of a debate. Okay, but what he is also saying that debate should be rational, not like Arnab Goswami's TV show where you shout on top of your voice, all of you. That is not debate. All of you at one time you start shouting. Nobody hears what is telling. So that is why many consider him to be a strong advocate of liberty, and that is why we say if there is anyone who is liberal, that is J.S. Mill. And when Jeremy Bentham had taken liberalism towards the path of utilitarianism, he brought it back with what? Liberty as the central thought of liberal ideology. But however, it's not that there is no criticism against his idea. You have certain criticism. So J.S. Mill, according to Barker, Barker calls J.S. Mill is a prophet. Is a prophet of empty liberty. J.S. Mill is a prophet of empty liberty. Who said, Barker or who said? I'm not sure. Barker only, na? Yeah, Barker only. Prophet of empty liberty. Now we need to understand why Ernst Barker is criticizing J.S. Mill as what? A prophet of empty liberty. So Ernst Barker is basically bit oriented towards socialism. J.S. Mill on the other hand is considered to be a liberal. So what Ernst Barker says that the idea or the type of liberty what this J.S. Mill is giving, he told it is not meaningful liberty, because he says that what Mill is largely speaking about, he is largely speaking about negative liberty, not positive liberty. So I think we have already explained what is negative liberty, what is positive liberty. So, or what is the difference between capacity and liberty when we did Thomas Hobbes. So obviously what is negative liberty? Negative liberty means you are free to walk from here to there. Nobody is going to stop you. Let us think a person does not have two legs. Now you are telling you have the freedom to walk. But he can't walk because it's not that he does not have liberty, he does not have capacity. To build that capacity, state will have to perform or give him wheelchair. So what this fellow is telling, what kind of liberty he is speaking about, he is only speaking about negative liberty. He is not speaking about positive liberty. It is meaningless. He is thinking about liberty in terms of what? Atomistic man. What do you mean by atomistic man? So the liberals always believe that society is like comprised of atoms, where each individual is an individual atom. So every individual is for himself. Individual does not have any concern towards society. Individual is a maker of his own destiny, and that is what we mean by atomistic man. So basically his understanding of society is what? Because man is an atomistic creature, that is why he has promoted the idea of negative liberty. But for Ernst Barker, he says this conception of atomistic man is wrong. He told man, like what Aristotle told, is a social animal. What do you mean by social animal? An individual cannot do anything by himself. An individual always need social help. We always live in a community. And for that kind of idea, negative liberty will be incompatible. You have to bring the idea of what? Positive liberty. What do you mean by positive liberty? The state will have to perform positive functions for an individual to enhance his capacity. So for example, how do you freely express yourself? Only when you have education. Who should give you that education? The state has to give you that education. So he says that he does not speak anything about that. He is only speaking about freedom of speech and expression. So it is meaningless. Simple. Now if you go tell somebody who is not educated, or he does not have got education because of poverty, etc., and you go tell, now you freely speak about United Nations and its peacekeeping forces. Tell you have freedom, you speak. What will they speak? So obviously he is speaking about that kind of liberty is empty. So if you want to make liberty more meaningful, it cannot be based on the understanding of what? Atomistic man. It should be based on the understanding of man is a social animal. Basically the state will have to build capacities of people. To build capacities of people, so how is your capacity built? Simple, na? Okay, you want to read. To read you need to have energy. To have energy you have to consume food. To consume food you need to have access to food. Simple, right? You can read, or let us take, for example, most of you are spending time 8 hours, 9 hours studying for UPSC exam. How you are able to do it? Because your parents are funding you, or you might work and come, etc. Okay, what about a person who basically has to work? Let us say somebody who is selling like pani puri on the road. From where will he come and study? You are getting mind. Now in Pani Puri fellow has the freedom to do UPSC exam, even you have the freedom to do UPSC exam, but everybody can't do the UPSC exam because everybody's social status is not same. So if the state creates, okay, you have money, that's why you have taken coaching. Let us say you didn't have money. There is problem for, what you can say, food only in your house. So how will you know how to study? So that is why if you see government of Karnataka, they they give coaching, free coaching for what? The weaker sections. That is what we call as building capacity. So what this fellow told, what kind of liberty, idea of liberty, what Mill has promoted, it is empty. Why it is empty? He is only propagating or promoting negative liberty. Maybe to that extent, the Ernst Barker's criticism is also based on ideological lines, because he is a socialist, this fellow is a liberal. Okay, but the argument what he brings is that you can't see liberty as just absence of restriction. The meaning of liberty cannot be seen only in terms of what? Absence of restriction. The true meaning of liberty is what? Building capacities in an individual where he truly achieves what he wants to achieve. That is what? Self-actualization. So that is what he is speaking on. Second problem, what this Barker says with Mill's argument. So this Mill, what he would have said is that though he is a strong advocate of freedom of thought, expression, action, etc., but he brings certain limitations on liberty. He is not telling that liberty means you do whatever you want. He tells no, there can be limitation brought by whom? Brought by the state on the individual. So like what? He told every individual's action, means when you are given freedom to act, freedom to do, you are understanding freedom to act, do things. He says there can be two types of action. One is self regarding action. The other is others regarding action. So what do you mean by self-regarding action? When you have certain freedom, when you act accordingly, it is only concerning you, it is not having impact on anybody else. In that area, in that sphere, you have complete freedom, you can do whatever you want. Now let us say, no, that fellow, he wants to build body. He wants to do exercise. It's his freedom. So let us think he will wear only a small shorts, no shirt, no anything, he will exercise in his house. Completely free to do. But let us think this fellow, same thing what he will do, he will come to the road, center of the road, he will start exercising with his only shorts, no shirt, no anything. Now this has implication on others. Others might feel uncomfortable. So what he says that when your action has impact on others, the state can intervene, the state can limit your action. Understood? In this area you are completely free, you do whatever you want, no problem. But if your action is harming others, that is where he brings something called as the harm principle. So that fellow likes to play cricket, in his house he will play cricket, he will break all his house glasses, no problem, it's his house, his wish, break whatever you want. But he playing cricket in his compound, but he is breaking the glass of next person's house. Now your action has impact on others, it is harming others, it can endanger others. Now the state can intervene, stop you from performing that action. That is what Mill had told. Mill told liberty is not absolute. There can be restrictions brought. Where restrictions were brought? Based on the harm principle. What do you mean by harm principle? If your action is causing harm to others, the state can prohibit your action or prohibit your freedom or take away your freedom. So what Mill is trying to say that you can swing your arms whichever way you want as long as it does not touch my nose. It's your hand, your wish, you swing however, I don't care. But as long as your hand does not touch my nose, because once it touches my nose, you are coming into others regarding action. This is what Mill spoke about. But what this Barker criticized him was that, and no, one more thing what Mill also said, even in self-regarding action, even in the case self-regarding action. Now let us say one fellow will decide to commit suicide. My freedom, he will tell I want to die. So if you look at in India also, we only have passive euthanasia, we don't have active euthanasia. So it doesn't mean that you decide to die tomorrow. You can't die. I am not telling you can't, I am telling that freedom is not given. So what he says, if there is even self-regarding action which is causing endangering your own life, the state can intervene. Means for example, he gives as an example, if somebody is trying to cross a bridge and you know that bridge is going to fall, the state has every right to stop that person from crossing that bridge. This is what Mill says. Even in self-regarding action, if there is endanger to your life, the state can intervene. So this is what Mill had told. What this Barker told, what is the problem with this? He told even in negative liberty, this Mill that also is not giving. Why? Because there also is bringing restrictions. And he tells what is the biggest problem with this fellow's argument is that how do you know which is self-regarding action and which is others regarding action, because every self-regarding action can be promoted as others regarding action and the state can take away the individual's liberty. And that is why Barker criticizes Mill as what this fellow is nothing more than what? A prophet of empty liberty. Means there is no meaning to the liberty, idea of liberty what Mill is giving. So that is what we look into Mill's view on liberty and the criticism brought against Mill's view on liberty by Ernst Barker. Got it? So here the key words you have to remember, certain key words were what? Atomistic man. The other keyword is harm principle. The other keyword is self-regarding action. Self regarding action, and you have others regarding action, and the other keyword you will be remembering is prophet of empty liberty. Prophet of empty liberty. Another keyword you will be remembering is freedom of speech and expression, freedom of action, freedom of association. Now, why I told these keywords, this is all not now. When you read the notes 2-3 times, when you revise 2-3 times, finally when you make your own set of notes, you need to just have keywords in your notes. Nobody can read the whole notes like how it is given to you end to end. That is only given for reading purpose, no understanding purpose. Success in this exam also lies with your notes making. If you don't have proper notes, you can't write well in mains. So don't make notes in starting period only, because that time you don't know what is important, what is not important. Only when you do 2-3 revisions and when you solve question papers, then you will get an idea, okay, what is important, maybe what additional content I might need. Then if you make your own set of short notes, that's what I told. What will be there in the short notes? Just the keywords. Why just the keywords? Because I know the keywords, I will be able to form the sentence. I will be able to recall it. But if you start making notes as what? Detailed sentences, how it is given again in your book, it's waste. You're just repeating what is written. Got it? So basically, by the time you write mains exam, the short notes what you have made, if you have revised 5-6 times, 100% you are going to perform well in the exam. That's why I told it is stage by stage. So first step is always to read. Second step is always to look at questions. Third step is to make notes, short notes. Fourth step is to revise those notes multiple times. Fifth step is that write lot of tests. Sixth step is go write the exam. But let us think you don't do these steps, only you read the notes, directly go to the exam. What will happen? You won't recall many things, you won't be able to write effectively. Got it? So understood about Mill's idea of liberty. That is why he is considered as what? If there is anybody who is liberal, it is J.S. Mill. Now the other key idea of Mill is also his views on democracy. Views on democracy. So if you look at J.S. Mill, we find that J.S. Mill is one of the strongest advocate of democracy. Strongest advocate of democracy. Because Mill considered democracy as an ideal form of government. He considered democracy what? It's an ideal form of government, best form of government. That you can easily connect to his previous ideas. Why? Because for Mill, any individual can be at his best if he has liberty. And which type of government provides maximum liberty for an individual? It is a democratic form of government. Because in a democratic form of government, it is the government by the people, of the people, for the people. So in a democratic form of government, people will have what? The same liberty what he spoke about, freedom of speech and expression, freedom to form association, freedom of action. Understood? So he is a strong advocate of democracy. He told democracy is the most ideal form of government. Democracy is a type of government which will enable individuals to be at their best. and that is why he was a strong defender of democracy. So he told ideally I am telling you, ideally he believed participatory model of democracy was best. Ideally he believed what? Participatory model of democracy. What do you mean by participatory model of democracy? Where people participate extensively in the democratic process, where people are not just limited as passive voters, people are actively participating. So I think in polity you would have read now, what are the four tools of participatory democracy? What are the four tools of a participatory democracy? Lakshmikant or basic NCRT. What are the four tools? Referendum, initiative, plebiscite, recall. So what is referendum? Referendum, plebiscite, initiative, as well as recall. These are the four tools of what we say as participatory democracy. So what is the difference between referendum and plebiscite? Both in people participate. Eredolo people participate. What is the difference? No. So how many of you are writing your first attempt? First time you are going to write the exam. I am doing first attempt. So how many of you have read polity? Read, only one. What about others? See, one of the main difference between those who clear prelims regularly and those who don't. Those who don't, they focus more on current affairs. Those who clear, they focus more on basics. UPSC is more about basics. Plain and simple. If your basics are very, very strong, and that can only become strong if you have done multiple rounds of revision. Let it be any current affairs. Every current affairs is linked to basics. It can be anything, any current affairs in polity. Okay, let us take Manipur president's rule. What will they ask? They won't ask which state they put president's rule. They are going to ask about president's rule. So, if your basics are very strong, the thing is that I am telling when it will be gone. If you have done multiple rounds of revision, there is no question of doubt or etc. You will taka you will tell. Amen. Now, when we say when president's rule is proclaimed, it leads to dissolution of the state assembly. True or false? When president rule is proclaimed, it leads to dissolution of the state assembly. True or false? How many of you say true? Raise your hand. It's okay, it's right or wrong. Okay. How many of you say it is false? Why false? Or why true? ಹೇಳು ಗಾಬರಿ ಆಗ್ಬಿಡ ಪರವಾಗಿಲ್ಲ ಏನಾಗಲ್ಲ without see the logic is that see no ground nothing, that's what I told. Basics are weak. Question is only different, your answer is only different. My question was simple. When president's rule is proclaimed, it leads to dissolution of the state assembly. The statement is incorrect. Proclamation means president has issued president's rule. It has not yet been approved by the parliament. The state assembly will be only dissolved if it is approved by the parliament. That is what the Supreme Court also clarified in the SR Bommai case. Again, point, see, that's the same problem I am telling. Now it is Manipur, it is some other issue. That is secondary, that is current affairs. Current affairs can be covered within 1 month. Current affairs is no big deal. You sit for 1 month straight away, take some 2 materials, do it, your current affairs will be done. 90% of them, they won't be strong in their basics. Okay, why they won't be strong in their basics? Answer is simple, they don't regularly revise. They don't solve questions. It's a day to day, you have to keep doing day to day. When you will get that kind of clarity, if you have read polity 8 to 10 times through previous year questions, 90% of the times any basic question they ask, you won't make a mistake. So the question always remains that, I don't know, 90% of the people who fail prelims is reason, it's not because they are not getting current affairs questions wrong, they are getting their basics questions only wrong in exam. And that's why I told you, UPSC is an exam, it is not cleared by those who are getting difficult questions correct, it is always cleared by those people who don't make any mistakes in the basic questions. Simple, that's what I told. So any subject you take, that's the trick. You should have revised that subject multiple times. If you have revised that multiple times, 100% you will get greater degree of clarity. But it will take time. It is not going to happen quickly. It will take time. But that is what you have to invest time on. But half of them, I told you, in our GS batches also, if you see, they are only hell bent on somehow completing the syllabus. That's what I keep doing. Some people like, mindless, like, I don't like, I think 2 days by one student had come, he told, sir, no, prelims will be done, I have to follow internal security classes, it is not done 15 days, etc. I told, who cares? If I was the right person choice, I would have not attended internal security. Watch a video, 2-3 questions will come, I can manage it. You are getting the point. Students are not coming here for coaching, for clearing the exam. They are only coming with the purpose of paisa vasool. Without any idea only for which subject, how many questions are coming, how to prepare for it. No idea. They are just like linear way. Linear way means what? Just go with the classes. No idea. That's why I told. See, that's this thing. You, to clear this exam, that's what I'm telling you. You have to understand how the exam is designed and how the questions are coming and how you have to go through. And that's what I told. Basics is something which you have to know. The basics of polity, participatory democracy, 4 tools: plebiscite, referendum, initiative, recall. The difference between plebiscite and referendum is both are same, where both people's opinion are taken into account, but in referendum it is binding, in plebiscite it's just the opinion that is collected. Initiative, where people will initiate policies, where people can initiate bills. Recall, if a representative is not doing his work, you have the right to recall him and send a new representative to that position. So that is the idea of participatory in today's time. But in general, participatory means people will participate not just as voters but also in other areas. So what this Mill told, he told this is the most ideal form, this is what is required. But the problem, what he told, for all this to happen, for people to participate, means vote on bills or discuss, etc. What do you need? You need education, you need knowledge. And for Mill, he told, everybody can't have this. So Mill, he told, practical is what? Go for a representative model of democracy. He told what? Go for a representative, that will be more practical. Why? Because participatory model is, though it is ideal, but it is not practical. So he told, go for a representative model of democracy, which is more a practical form of government. So though he was an advocate of participatory model, he did go for what? Representative model. Now this Mill, even though he speaks so much about democracy, he is also criticized as a reluctant democrat. He is also criticized as what? Reluctant democrat. What is the word, meaning of the word reluctant? What do you mean by reluctant? Not willing. So he is a promoter of democracy, but there is again some degree of unwillingness. But with regards to what? So this Mill's problem was that what Mill said, you know, democracy is not a free gift that can be distributed across the world. Meaning of that, Mill was a person who believed democracy is not suitable everywhere. Democracy cannot be promoted everywhere. He told we should not forget that this democracy what we have, it has taken years of struggle for us to achieve this democracy. Why? Because American Revolution, the French Revolution, people sacrificed their lives, etc. And he told it should not be distributed as a free gift to every part of the world. The other meaning of that is that all people do not deserve democracy. And he told especially colonies. Because I don't know, when he wrote this work, British were ruling India. So he told what? Even though he is an advocate of democracy, he told democracy should not be extended. Should not be extended. It should not be extended to colonies. Colonialism, you know, right? British had colonized India, colonies. Why? Because he told here people are not civilized. People are not civilized. He told people are barbarians. People are barbarians. Barbarians means what? UN. Cruel, not cultured. Some say is wrong, but sometimes I feel it is correct. We are barbarians, not all, in some parts of India. So what he told, they are barbarians. Barbarians means not civilized. So he told for democracy to function well, people need to be civilized, people need to be cultured, people need to have knowledge, people need to have education. So that's why he told you can't extend democracy everywhere, and especially he told you should not extend it to colonies. So what is the contradiction in his ideas? One hand he is telling democracy is the best form of government, etc., etc. On the other hand, the same person is also telling we have to not extend democracy. For some people, he says that this fellow has an ethnocentric view. What is ethnocentric view? Is only looking at from an angle of European supremacy, and is consider all other civilization as inferior. And he says that for them, they don't deserve democracy. For them, he says better form of government is benevolent despotism. Better form of government is what? Benevolent despotism. Who is a despot? An authoritarian ruler. He is ruling with iron hand, but is ruling for your good. Can you understand? In simple terms, I am going to belt you, but I am going to belt you for your good. So he told for these colonies. So some argue that why Mill wrote like this, in a way they tell he is trying to justify the British rule in India. You are getting my point? So when you have read modern history, you would have read the British rule in India. The British ruled India. See, if you logically think, a small highland country, Britain is a small island country. If you take United Kingdom, it becomes big. If you take only England, it's even more small. Ruled a big country like India for 150 years. You can't just attribute that to only their superior military strength. Yeah, that was there. They had a superior navy. But you also have to add a British rule in India, because when we read IR, you will understand there is also something called a soft power. And that is what we say. The Indian land was decolonized in 1947, but Indian minds are yet to be decolonized. Even today, Indians have this slave mentality. I don't know, for example, you go to YouTube. I think we have told before, like these foreigners, they will review Indian movies. There are foreigners who review Indian movies, not full movie. They'll see the trailer and they'll tell, "Ware wah, what Indian movie they've done." Why they don't review Pakistani movies? Why they don't review Sri Lankan movies? Why they don't review African movies? Logic, views. India is the country with the 1.3 billion population. Secondly, why they are reviewing our movies? That is one hand, you will get views. Second hand is that we Indians also are these white foot lickers, saying that we want certification from the whites. Oh, your movie is so great. Will they come and tell, please, please, please review our Batman, please, please, please review our Avengers? They don't care. That is what we say. The problem with Indians, we have never been Indians. Always fighting on religion, caste. Same thing. And British knew it. And they told what initially when they came, we are going to rule to upbring you. We will make you the next England. But what they did was ulta. You know, when British rule, India did not industrialize. India became deindustrialized. During British rule, it's not that India's literacy rate went up, India's literacy rate declined. During British rule, they told we gave you railways. They did not give railways for our benefits. Tilak, he said, British giving railways to India is like you buying a diamond necklace and costly diamond necklace and decorating another man's wife and telling she looks so beautiful. Your money, because it was not British money, it was private investors' money. India had to pay 5% returns out of the Indian revenue. Present India-Pakistan problem, outcome of the British policy of divide and rule. Simple, now what we see with Pakistan problem, if you go back to roots, it goes back to Minto Morley reforms, where he gave separate electorates to the Muslims. And that's why we say that British never just ruled Indian land, they ruled Indian minds, they even continue to rule Indian minds. So for example, take the colonial legacy. Till Vajpayee became the Prime Minister, India presented the budget evening. Till evening they present the budget. Why? Because it was a colonial practice. And that is what we say, that this fellow, some say, why he wrote like that? It's like to, justify that British ruling India, colonizing India, because there was a contradiction, like British was democracy, but they did not extend democracy to India. But he justified on what grounds? That Indians do not deserve democracy. Why? Indians are barbarians. And he told democracy is only for civilized countries. But you can look at this statement from multiple angles. I am only looking from a post-colonial perspective and I am making a critique of it. But there can be certain extent where you can argue the statement what he makes may be sometimes also valid to a certain extent. Why? Because when you look at in contemporary times, take the case of Pakistan, take the case of Afghanistan, take the case of Syria. wherever democracy has been imposed, have collapsed. They have not survived. Why? Because one part we can agree. Yes, for democracy to succeed, you need people also to understand the values and the tenets of democracy. Otherwise, it cannot survive. So what the Americans did, especially once they became the superpower, America started exporting democracy to other countries to fight communism. But problem what happened, democracy won't survive just because you bring democracy there. Democracy has its own necessities that you will understand when we read the topic on democracy. Democracy should not be neverly seen as just conducting elections and getting a government elected. That is a very narrow way of looking at democracy. Democracy is not just about elections. Democracy is a value. There should be rule of law, there should be secularism, there should be civil society, there should be multiple political parties, there should be free and fair elections. People need to have a choice. Democracy has a lot of elements. All these elements should be present in those countries for democracy to function effectively. If you are just building a building which does not have good foundation, the building is bound to collapse in matter of time. So in that degree we can agree to certain extent what he told might be true. But some argument is that there is an element of him trying to justify the British rule or British colonization of the world in the name, saying that these colonies do not deserve democracy, and that is why he is called as what? Reluctant democrat. That is one part. There is another part why they will call him also as a reluctant democrat. Even when he told there is democracy, as I told, he brought what? Representative model of democracy. In that also he introduced lot of measures. One, he proposed for there should be bicameral legislature. So that is why you take in England, you have upper house, lower house, and he told there should be an upper house. Why it is called as upper house? Why this is called as lower house? For example, we say the term lower house for Lok Sabha, upper house for Rajya Sabha. Same in England, you have House of Commons, the House of Lords. House of Lords is called as the upper house. House of Commons is called as lower house. Why this is called lower? Why that is called as upper? What is the reason for it? Upper house? Reason person. Yeah, you can say that, but the logic is that at that point of time, lords were all belonging to the elite class, commons, lower class. That is why upper house, lower house. So this fellow told there should be an upper house, means there is sense of elitism in his democracy. And he told everybody can't be given voting rights. He did not promote universal adult franchise, he didn't promote that. He only promoted limited franchise. What do you mean by limited franchise? Only those who are educated, those who have property, only they can vote. And what was the reason he gave? If you have property, you will have reason. If you have property, you have reason that you should not damage others' property because they might damage your property. Education you can connect, you have knowledge, etc. He also said there should be weighted voting. One man, one vote, one value is not there. The value of vote will differ based on your status. So like let us take IMF. In IMF, every country is not have one vote, one value. America has 16% voting value. India has 2.4% voting value. Maybe a small highland country like Tuvalu, it has 0.001%. Same here. Weighted voting means everybody's vote will not be the same. Those who have property, those who have education will have higher weightage of vote compared to others. And he also said that what plural voting. What is plural voting? Where you have properties, like let us say I have property in Bangalore, I have property in Maharashtra, I should be given two voting. Plural voting. So these are all the limitations he brought on democracy. So he is promoting what kind of democracy? Not unqualified democracy. He is promoting an idea of qualified democracy. He is not promoting an idea of what? Universal adult franchise. No. He is promoting an idea of what? Qualified democracy. Hence, J.S. Mill is criticized as what? A reluctant Democrat. Got it? Understood why he is a. So first you have to write about his views on democracy, how he is a strong advocate of democracy, what kind of democracy is promoting. Then you have to speak about the criticism, that why we consider him as a reluctant Democrat. Any doubt here? Anything which you did not understand? So you understood what is participatory democracy, what is representative model of democracy, what do you mean by qualified democracy, what do you mean by, what is that, unqualified democracy, what do you mean by negative liberty, what do you mean by positive liberty, what do you mean by atomistic man, what do you mean by man is a social animal. These are all your basics. That's what I told. NCRT is one of the most undervalued book. Means we don't value NCRT, we don't read NCRT multiple times, thinking that what the market dump what is there that will help us to crack. That you have to read, but first you have to be very strong in your basics. So only when you are strong in your basics, then you can speak about what clearing the exam. So when you are not strong in your basic, obviously it's not going to take you anywhere. You are getting a point. That's the thing. If you are very, very strong in basics, geography, polity, economy, history, science and tech, and what else is there? Environment. These subjects, if you are very, very strong in your basics, I can assure that 99% you don't fail in prelims. 99% your mains understanding will be also very good. But for mains you need to update on issues. But if your basics are very, very weak, then there is no solution for it. Remember, the only solution for that is luck. What is luck? The way you have read, the way that your question paper has come is same. Maybe that time your luck is on your side, you might crack it. But that is 1 in 1000 times that can happen. Right? Same with optional also, basic. Your basics should be very strong. Then what is the thing, no matter what question they'll ask, you are ready to write an answer to it. You don't look at question paper, is it difficult or is it easy? Difficult or easy is relative, right? How do you say it is difficult, how do you say it's easy? It is relative, it depends upon your preparation. So that's what I told you. Here the basic idea, positive liberty, negative liberty, qualified democracy, unqualified democracy, and what do you have, what is the other thing, representative model democracy, what is participatory model. So Mill, though he believes that participatory democracy is an ideal form of government, for practical purpose he is gone for what? Representative model of democracy. And he has promoted what idea of democracy? And qualified version of democracy. And what kind of liberty is mooted? Negative liberty. But some consider him that he belongs to this time period where you can see certain shifts happening within liberalism. Means within Mill, slowly you can see the emergence of positive liberty. Why? Because he said state can intervene and state can do certain things. Especially with property, when you look at J.S. Mill, he told private ownership of property is needed, but that private ownership of property is for common good of the people, like same the Aristotelian logic. So some say that what? Mill come in this transition period of shift from negative liberty towards positive liberty, and some say that Mill was not against socialism, but he said any idea of socialism should be premised on the foundations of atomistic man. Socialism means he believed that state can do welfare functions, but central to his thought was what? You should not subsume individual for the sake of society. For socialism, society is bigger than the individual, but for liberals, individual is always bigger than the society. So this you can divide into three components. One sections who believe that individual is self-made, individual has no contribution to society, he need not care about society, just lead your life. They are called as either classical liberals or in extreme form they are called as neoliberals. You have not yet read neoliberals because you have to read ideology. They will come in 1980s and 1990 period. Why they are called as neoliberals or extreme liberals? They are extreme version of individualism. Extreme version. What do you mean by extreme version? They say the whole world works on only individual, means you are given freedom, using that freedom you can achieve anything, but the state should not come and help anybody. State's only role is to what? Play the role of watchman. They won't give subsidies, they won't give education, they won't give health because it is not the duty of the state. You have to make use of the opportunity. So that extreme version, what they tell, rich are rich, poor are poor, because rich are very productive, poor are lazy. And you have scholars there like William Sumner who says, let the drunkard be in the gutter, that is where he deserves. Somebody has drunk and fallen into gutter, let him stay there, why will you help him? That is the extreme version. On the middle version, you have these positive liberals. Next you will read them, T.H. Green, Lusky, McIver. They agree that what? Individual liberty is very important, atomistic man is important, but they say that we can't say that individual should always only think about himself. There is a logical connection between individual and society. So whatever you own, whatever you have, it should also contribute to the welfare of others. Only then we will prosper. And that is why they bring some element of what? Socialism into liberalism. That state can perform certain actions like provide education, skill, health, but still for them what? Individual should not be subordinated to the society. On this side of the spectrum you have socialists who also believe same idea that what? That state should perform functions. The only difference between positive liberals and socialists is that for socialists, they don't premise it on atomistic man, they premise it on what? Man is a social animal. Means what is good for the society is good for the individual because individual is part of the society. You understand? What is good for the society is good for the individual. That is a subtle difference between what? Positive liberals and socialists. On this side of the extreme, you have communists who believe that there should be no private ownership of property, there is nothing called as individualism, everything belongs to the society, individual is part of the society. So he should not speak out liberty, first important for them is equality. For achieving equality, we can take away liberty, it is justified. So these are the different variations you have within the ideological spectrum. When you take Mill, where does he come? He comes somewhere between this negative liberty and positive liberty, means between classical liberalism. He is not completely positive liberal, but he is not completely negative liberal also. You understanding? But if you take Locke, Hobbes, they completely come under what? Classical liberalism. Next, when you read about T.H. Green, McIver, they all come under positive liberalism. Got it? What is the ideological, when I say spectrum? So that's why I told. This you will understand better when we do the topic on ideologies. Okay. But again, when we do ideologies, you are going to read again same thing. Locke, Mill. The next scholar, what we read? Marx. The entire ideology of Marxism is based on the premise of Marx's idea. Understood the difference? So that is what some consider Mill as what? He comes during this time period when liberalism is tilting from what? Negative liberty towards positive liberty. But as I told, he is not completely promoting positive liberty. That is why this person called as Ivor Brown, he says that Mill has based his idea of socialism on the platform of atomistic man. Means he is bringing compatibility between what? liberalism and socialism to a certain extent. So that is one thing you will have to know about J.S. Mill. In the next class, we will take up the last part of J.S. Mill, that his views on voting rights for women, because Mill was one of the first person to advocate that women should be given voting rights. And why that book, what is written, Subjection of Women. So he is spoken about how women face discrimination within societies. So he is speaking about conditions in England. So he will see there women, many women are running, what you can say, estates, teachers, they are doctors, some of them at that point of time. So when they can do all this work effectively, why can't we give them voting rights? So he disregards this Aristotelian sense that women should be only limited to household work, and he told women should be brought into parliament. And he speaks about the advantages of it. And because of his writings, he also wrote a letter and essay and gave it to the British Parliament, asking the British Parliament to give voting rights to women. And you can say because of this, there was a lot of movements started in Europe saying that women demanding their voting rights. Because you can say when French Revolution happened, American Revolution happened, though they achieved democracy, they didn't give voting rights to women. For women to get voting rights, it took one more 50 years for them to fight. New Zealand became the first country in 1893 to give voting rights to women. So let us take your modern history. When were voting rights given to women in India? 19? It is the Government of India Act 1919. Women were giving voting rights, but not all women, only those who were educated and those who had property. But once India got its independence, we framed our constitution, we brought the principle of universal adult franchise. So that is why some credit the idea that what bringing women into parliament is J.S. Mill. So where you can link in your optional J.S. Mill also, because in part B of political science you will be reading about women reservation bill, that is the 106th constitutional amendment. So in that answer you can write about Mill. I am not telling GS paper, optional paper, because Mill has brought arguments why women have to be brought to parliament. That we will do in your next class, and that will be the end of Mill. Okay. The next scholar will be a main scholar, that is Karl Marx, and he is a big scholar because you read, so what you read here the same thing repeats as Marxism. Okay, so I will share the notes of that, Marx notes also, try to go through it once so that you will understand the class even better. If you have read something then you will understand it better. Mill, look into the notes once again in that regard, and also look into questions, because tomorrow tomorrow there is no class, Monday again we will be solving certain questions on Mill before going to Marx, and you have to keep revising the previous scholars, Plato, Aristotle, Machiavelli, Hobbes, John Locke, because if you don't revise you will get heavily confused, who is saying what. If you do constant revisions, clarity will be there. Got it?